You're listening to The Wedding Whisperer with Sarah Burton of Simply Love Studio in Lexington, Kentucky. Have you been wondering when you're supposed to send out your save the dates or your invitations? Or maybe how much you should budget for all of your wedding stationery? Or maybe if you are thinking you want to DIY your stationery so that you can save a little money. If you've had any of those thoughts at 2 o'clock in the morning because you can't sleep and you don't know what to do, then today's episode is going to be for you. I have Allison from Wild Joy Studios chatting with me today about all things stationery. Allison, thank you so much for joining me.
I'm glad I could be here.
Me too. It only took me a year to get you to do this.
I was a little hesitant.
Because you just don't like to talk. You're an introvert, basically.
I am an introvert. I'm not a public speaker. Yeah, I'm pretty quiet.
Well, we will make it through this together. So tell me a little bit about who you are and your business.
I'm Allison. I run Wild Joy Studios. My business does wedding stationery. I've been doing this for almost 10 years. When we got married in 2015, that's when I started. I did my stationery. I had a friend that was getting married the same year, and I did her wedding stationery. And then I just didn't stop doing wedding stationery.
And here we are in 2024.
And here we are.
And in addition to stationery, you also do some graphic design and some of those like creative things. So it's not just stationery, but that's primarily what we're going to focus on today. Tell me what it is about wedding stationery that you enjoy so much.
So I love wedding stationery. One of the main things that I love is that when I got started in graphic design, I was doing more boring stuff. I was doing hospital maps, like things that have to be rigidly designed and there's no creative freedom. With stationery, you can make pretty things and like they're things that people are going to love and keep as keepsakes to remember their wedding by and like presumably one of your happier days. And it's great to be able to make something pretty that people get to love for those reasons.
And I will say, whenever I started my business years ago, one of the first things after I had said that I was going to do this and I would talk to my parents about it, my mother came in with a folder of every invitation and every wedding program she had ever collected, of every wedding she had ever been to, and probably some she randomly found just to save those to be safe. So people do collect those. I still have them from several friends' weddings that I'm super close with or weddings that I have been in. And the nicer the stationery, the longer it stays on my refrigerator. I currently have 2 wedding suites on there. One is from 2020 and one is from 2021 because they were really pretty and they had calligraphy on the outside of them and they're just too pretty to throw away. So they're still there. One of the things that Allison and I were talking about before we got started is I wanted to talk about the difference in stationery with an E and stationery with an A because I see a lot of people misspell it. I mean, the world's not going to end if you misspell stationery by any means. And we are trying to come up with a way to help you remember that. The way I remember it is not a way anybody else would ever remember it. And the only thing that we came up with is stationery with an E is a letter. So you're like Letter. So the E, you're sending a letter to someone. And so the stationery has the E in it like letter does. So maybe that helps. Maybe it doesn't.
I don't have anything much better, so we're going to stick with letter has an E, stationery has an E.
Perfect. So let's talk about what is considered part of a basic invitation suite.
So for me, what I include in a basic invitation suite is the invitation itself, telling people where to go, what time, where it is, all of that. The RSVP card where they send in their response, let you know if they're coming. Sometimes people ask for, more information for food choices, song requests, etc. And then the 2 envelopes for those, the outer envelope for holding everything, and then the little envelope for the RSVP card. And that's my basic.
As I have said a million times, I feel like the pandemic took away any etiquette that we had left. And I do feel like it has taken more of the stationery etiquette that I would personally prefer. I do feel like some couples have gone more toward a digital invite where it's literally just sending an email with an attachment versus actually sending it in the mail. And we are definitely seeing shorter time frames for engagements. And so sometimes couples will do that for a save the date, but not the invitation. So what Allison just mentioned is your traditional invitation suite, what you typically need for when you send out, come to my wedding, basically. There are different types of stationery, though, when it comes to the wedding. I actually made a list and it kept growing. So the first thing you typically do will be a save the date for the wedding.
Yeah. And so for save the dates, you're looking at somewhere between like a year in advance to maybe around 6 months in advance. You definitely want to look and see if like your wedding is on any holidays that your guests are going to need to plan around, or if it's a destination wedding where people are going to need to book things well in advance, you're going to want to send out the save the date early, and you're going to want to put together your wedding website early with all the information that they're going to need so that they can make their travel arrangements. That said, you don't want to go too early. Don't go like 2 years in advance. People are going to forget.
Or they get the year wrong.
Yep, they might get the year wrong. There's always a balance that you've got to strike.
And I usually say no more than 364 days.
Yeah.
Because again, the year, they'll freak out and think that they didn't get it in time. And then Allison mentioned if it's around holidays, in Kentucky, we do consider April and October holidays because of Keeneland and football. And then we also have Derby. So if it's around any of those, you definitely want to be conscious of when you are sending those out so that your guests can get hotel rooms. And then this year and previous years, Railbird has always been something that you want to work around because people for Railbird take up hotel rooms.
I actually have a Railbird bride this year. Not that she's going to Railbird for her wedding, but she's planning her wedding that weekend. And so we put all over her weddings, book your hotels early. Like, we're trying to make it perfectly clear to her guests to book things as soon as they can. So,
and then sometimes you may have an engagement party that someone throws for you. So there may be an engagement party invitation. Those can be pretty casual as well. Let's back up. When we talk about save the dates, a lot of times if you have saved some on Pinterest, you will notice that they correlate with the rest of the stationery. And so that at that point, if you want to work with a custom designer on a crest or a monogram, or if you have a theme or a color that you want to carry throughout, you want to start that with your save the date and make sure that whatever you are doing for that is also available for everything else.
Yeah, it makes me wish that I could show you things over the podcast because I have so many cool like crests that I've made for customers for their save the dates. I have one that I made just recently this year for a Colorado wedding, and it's this pretty crest with like Colorado scenery and like pretty gorgeous autumn leaves. It's just so pretty. But I love to make the save the date that's gonna kind of usher you into the rest of your wedding suite.
And then occasionally brides will also do Will You Be My Bridesmaid cards. Those a lot of times will go in gifts for the bridesmaids, or sometimes those are mailed if the bridesmaid is out of state. Then rehearsal dinner invitations, you cannot forget those, especially if you are doing something more formal. A lot of times I think couples just think that their guests automatically assume that they're coming to rehearsal dinner, or they assume that they know what time it is or where it's at or where they're supposed to park or all of those things. Never assume anything that your guests know anything because you could have told them something 6 months ago and it's changed since then. So rehearsal dinner invites, I do think, get lost sometimes in the mix of things, but that is something important to definitely remember to do.
Yeah, and it's as easy as like I can even print off a separate card for the people that are invited to your rehearsal dinner, and we can just include that in your wedding invitation. Like, you don't have to go completely separate with it. We can keep it simple and just let them know what's going on.
And it comes back to the +1 on that as well. Your bridesmaids, groomsmen will want to know if they can bring a +1 to dinner or if it's strictly them.
And yeah, so kind of the general rule of thumb for that is that, like, if somebody is in a dedicated relationship, whether or not you know their significant other, you should let them have the +1. If you're on a really strict, like, we can't have a whole bunch of guests, then you might want to talk with people individually and all of that. Your bridal party should always, no matter what, get a +1. Either they're paying to be in your wedding, you want to let them have somebody that they can hang out with during, like, the reception and stuff.
Absolutely. And of course, the wedding invitation. When should a couple start working on their wedding invitation?
So let's start backwards and kind of go from the wedding. I recommend that you mail the invitation out somewhere between 6 to 8 weeks before your wedding. I try to convince my clients that unless, like we talked about before, you're at a holiday wedding or a destination wedding, that you don't want to go much further back from that, because if you do, people are going to forget to RSVP. If you're going to do custom, you're going to want to do at least, I would say, start 2 months before that. Earlier than that even is great to start on the design for your custom if you're really wanting something custom that goes through all your stationery. I've started custom work like as early as more than a year before people have their date set.
And two, if you are going to be writing all the dresses on the envelopes, you will want to have plenty of time to do that. If you are like handwriting those, I'm like 5 to 10 a day. After that, your handwriting's going to get sloppy and you're over it. Or break it up, have your bridesmaids come over, everybody writes on 10. I was going to say drink wine with that. Do not do that if you're writing on the invitations by any means. But it does take some time to get all of that together to make sure you have all of your dresses together. Hopefully, if you've done save the dates, then you do have the dresses already together. And then, like Allison said, the 6 to 8 week mark for sending out invitations has really been the sweet spot, I think, and closer to the 8 if it is going to be a destination wedding. One of the things that I get a lot is I have my A list and I have my B list for their invitations. I think sometimes couples will put their RSVP date a little sooner so that way if people send the invitations back or the RSVP cards back and they get a bunch of no's, then they can invite other people. Let's dive deeper into what an actual wedding invitation has on it.
Okay, so 90% of the time, my invitations start out with along with their friends and family as the host line, and then it lists the names of the couple getting married. If that is a woman and a man getting married, usually the bride's name comes first.
And we carry that throughout monograms and everything. I've actually tried to look that up before why we do that. I still don't know. And maybe on the invitation, it comes first if tradition where the parents of the bride hosted the wedding. And maybe that's why, but it can be whatever.
And you can break that tradition. I am a strong proponent of breaking tradition in your wedding invitations if you want to. So then after the names and everything, depending on how formal you want to go, you list the date. You can spell that out if you want. I don't spell it out completely for most of my couples, but some like the way it looks all spelled out. And it is kind of fun to go fancy with it. And then you'll have the time everything starts, the time your ceremony starts, and the name of the wedding venue and the city that you're in. Generally, you don't want to put the venue's address on your invitation. We will put that somewhere else in your information just to keep the invitation pretty and clean and nice. We don't want to clutter it too much. For most of them, I usually put just a little note at the bottom that's something along the lines of merriment to follow or dinner and dancing to follow. Something to let people know that a reception is after.
How many of your couples do you see starting their ceremony at 1/2 Apparently, that is a tradition that you're supposed to start at 5:30, 6:30, 7:30 while the clock is on its upswing. I always have that conversation with brides. Do yours seem to care?
Honestly, I would say it's probably 50-50 with whether mine go 1/2 or just on the hour. It's not a tradition that I even knew existed, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah. I see 1/2 here and there. And yeah, it kind of depends on the bride. I don't think that's one of the most common ones.
I typically come up with a ceremony start time based on sunset time and work my way back to a ceremony time. And wherever the ceremony time falls is my recommendation for the ceremony, whether it's at 5 o'clock, 5:30, 6, 6:30, whatever.
Honestly, we based ours on when we wanted to eat. So
priorities. Exactly. So you will have an invitation, and that is going to be the biggest piece of paper. Then you will have an RSVP card.
And the RSVP card is going to have, traditionally, you just put an M on there and then some lines for your person to write their names. The M stands for Mr. or Mrs. It's a question I get pretty often. What is that M for? It's just for Mr. or Mrs. And then you'll have a little spot for them to check yes or no. Are they coming? Are they not coming? Sometimes, like I said, depending on how much information you need to collect, you can ask for dinner choices. I've had people do little song request lines. I've had people do fun little Venn diagrams of how much beer do you think you're going to drink? How much wine do you think you're going to drink? Stuff like that.
I have never seen that. That's actually really clever.
The first wedding invitation other than me, that's what she came up with. So,
I mean, that's pretty smart.
She's pretty smart.
Hotel cards and information cards are something else that you may find in with your invitation suite. Definitely seeing less couples do a traditional hotel room block now and just giving their guests hotel information on their wedding website. Honestly, I still recommend doing a block for multiple reasons, especially if you are, again, April and October, you will want to do that. You'll want to put that information on a card in your invitation so that your guests do not overlook that. And we've talked about a wedding website a million times, but if you have grandparents or aunts and uncles who maybe are not tech savvy, they may not know exactly what a wedding website is and what the purpose of that is. I know, Allison, sometimes you have an outer envelope and then you have an inner envelope. Tell me what the difference of the different envelopes are.
So generally, for the situations where you're going to want an inner envelope is if you have an envelope liner, like a pretty envelope liner that you want to use, you're going to want that on something that your guests aren't going to tear open. If you put it on the outer envelope that gets, glued, sealed shut, people are just going to rip that open. They're not going to see it. It's going to be pretty art that's never experienced. So basically what we do in that case is we take an inner ungummed, which just means that it doesn't have glue on it, envelope, and we attach the liner to that. And if you want to get fancy with it, you can put the exact names of the guests that are invited to your wedding so that there's no question on who's invited. Then the outer envelope, it's basically what holds everything, including that inner envelope if you decide to use it, together. It has your address on there, your guest address, your return address, and your postage. It's sealed shut with glue so that everything stays safe inside of it.
You gave me a word in your spiel there about how we can remember stationery with an E.
Oh,
you said experience. Your stationery is an experience. It is the start of experiencing your wedding as a guest.
I love it. Yes, it can be an experience. And if you're a paper person and paper's important to you, then it should be an experience. And yes, I love it.
We're going to use that forever now.
E for experience, stationery.
One of the big things that I want to also talk about is addressing the invitations in the envelopes. I talked about that a second ago about how it does take a good amount of time to do that. And especially if you are handwriting those, you don't want to do them all at once. Let's talk through a practical, efficient way to do that. And that is to have your stationery person do that for you, essentially.
Yep.
Or a calligrapher. And sadly, we do not have a ton of calligraphers here in our area, which is honestly devastating. If you know a calligrapher, send them my way or Allison's way. But let's talk about if you are printing the addresses on an envelope, how do you do that?
So I have two ways that I can do it. I can do direct to envelopes, which is a little more expensive. It's a little more time consuming for me. It jams the printer. I have to fight with it. I also offer my favorite way to do it, it's these big, pretty wraparound sticker labels that can coordinate with the rest of your design. And honestly, in a lot of cases, I think they look nicer than printing directly on the envelope. And if you want to use dark envelopes, it helps ensure that your stationery is not going to get lost in the mail, because a lot of times when your stationery goes through the mail, the white ink that they use on dark envelopes, it can rub off. It's harder for the machines to read. It's just, there's a lot of variables with the white ink that I don't like. I don't offer white ink. If you want a darker colored envelope, our main method of addressing those is going to be either a calligrapher, which you're going to have to find, or the labels.
And from what I have seen, any type of a white or a lighter color ink on the envelope has a less chance of getting to your guest. So if you have spent $2 to $7 on this envelope and you have 10 different sets of families that did not get it, then you've literally just wasted money. And then you're going to be wondering where their RSVP is at. And then you're going to text someone, they're going to be like, oh, I never got an invitation. Then you're going to have to be like, oh, who else didn't get an invitation? Even though sometimes you want it to be a certain aesthetic, it's better just to go traditional when it comes to putting ink on the outside of an envelope and color.
Yeah.
We cannot forget thank you notes. You can definitely correspond those with your monogram, crest, whatever you have done with the rest of your stationery. The common rule out there is that you have a year after the wedding to send a thank you note. There are some couples that will send them after a shower. That way it is taken care of. Danny from First Dance Lexington actually talked on her podcast about how when they were on their honeymoon in Greece, they bought postcards while they were over there and actually wrote their thank you notes from there and put those in the mail. I love that idea. I thought that was super fun.
That's really cute.
But if you do want to do a traditional route, definitely you can do those with your stationery.
And the great thing about it is that, like, after we've designed your thank you notes, they're thank you notes for your family. You can come back and order them and use them for the rest of your life. It's something that you're going to get a bunch of use out of. And, like, it's only been just these past couple of years that people have really started ordering thank you notes from me, and I'm really excited about it.
It had not even dawned on me that you can literally use those forever.
Yeah.
One thing that we kind of touched on in the very beginning are maps. I know that you are very passionate about maps.
I love wedding maps. Well, I love maps in general. I draw maps in my spare time. I have tons of maps of different parts of Lexington and, like, the world. But with a map, the possibilities are endless. It's such a pretty, like, piece of artwork that you can keep and have, again, as a keepsake, as an artifact of your day. You can put your wedding venue on there. You can put where I've had people do them for the welcome bags, and they put places around town, suggestions for their guests to visit. They put where they met on them. They put where their first date was. Cute stuff like that. I love maps.
One of my other favorite things that you do are the watercolor venue drawings. Is that the right wording for that?
Illustrations, venue illustrations. I don't want to mislead anybody. I do everything in digital watercolor. It's not watercolor on paper for the most part, because I have ADHD and I cannot keep up with the art supplies that I would need to do real watercolor. So I use Procreate, and I love Procreate. But I have quite a few stock, and, like, my selection is growing of stock venue illustrations for places around Lexington and a few places that are in other parts of the U.S. I have not done any international venues yet, but maybe one day.
I know you have the Round Barn, you have Zorro, you have Apiary Front Doors, which is beautiful, Harbor Hall. Do you have Limestone Hall?
I have Limestone Hall. I just today did the Carrick House.
Oh, perfect. Okay. That's a good one to have.
Yeah, I have a few people getting married there this year. So
one of the cool things that I think that you do is whenever a couple goes through you for a custom stationery set, if you have already done the watercolor of their venue, like Harbor Hall, Limestone Hall, you actually include that in their stationery complimentary.
Yeah, if they want to include a venue illustration in some way, like if they want to work that into their crest or something, and it's one that I've already done, as long as you're getting like custom work through me, I'm not going to charge extra just for that venue illustration. Like there's no extra charge for us to use the stock illustration.
And if you haven't done one of that venue before, you can do that for a minimal fee.
Yeah, and like if it's a venue around town that I'm going to get a lot of use out of, a lot of times I'll just throw that in as well under the, you're already paying a custom design fee. I'm happy to make the illustration. So
I also know that Rebecca Skilton, who did a podcast probably toward the end of last year, she got married at Zorro, and she ended up using your watercolor as a guest book. I think they put a mat around the venue. It was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, I've had people do where guests sign the mat and then they frame it with the signed mat and use that as their guest book. I've also had people have me print it smaller on the paper so that guests can simply sign around it on the paper. So both are gorgeous, both are fun. It's a fun alternative to the traditional guest book.
In addition to doing the venue, I had you do a bouquet a couple years ago for one of my friends that got married. Roselia did her bouquet, and I asked you to do a watercolor of it, and you put their last names on it, put I think the wedding date, and it was absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I've done a couple bouquets for people. I love doing that. Like florals are some of my favorite things to do, and you know, bouquets are pretty much all florals, and I enjoy doing the bouquets, yeah.
And then I also had you do a crest with my dog in it because I'm a little extra.
Piper!
Yes, and so Piper my dog has her own thank you cards now. She is the front of them. I have mailed 3, I think, out now, and 2 of those people will text me to say, oh my gosh, these are the cutest things ever. So you can definitely put your crest on the front of your thank you cards. I think that's super fun. Something you'll have. I also got a bigger print of Piper's crest that I will eventually frame and put on the wall. The sky is literally the limit when it comes to what you can do. If you think it up for your wedding or your everyday life, Allison can put that on paper and make it happen. One of the other things that I absolutely love about wedding stationery are wax seals or wax stamps. What's the proper terms?
Wax seals. I usually call them wax seals.
If somebody doesn't know what that is, will you explain that to them?
Absolutely. So a wax seal, it's kind of the traditional way to do it is you would melt some wax in like a little spoon, and then you would pour it on your letter to seal it, and then you would seal it with your family seal or stamp. We typically don't use them, or at least I'm going to do my very best to convince you to not use them to seal your outer envelope with, because when that goes through the mail, it's going to get torn off. Your stationery is not going to make it to where it was going because it's all going to fall out. Like the earlier circumstance, you're throwing away money. Like, don't use them on the outer. But what they are good for is sealing the inner envelope. That's another place where using an inner envelope can come in really fun. So yeah, it's basically just a little round bit of melted wax that can hold something together.
It's about the size of a quarter.
Yeah, about the size of a quarter. It also doesn't have to hold anything together. I've put them just on as decoration as well. So they're just really pretty, really elegant. They add a little something to the invitation.
And one thing that couples may be surprised by is the amount of money it costs to mail stationery. I don't even know what a traditional stamp is at this point.
I don't either, not off the top of my head. Maybe $54.
We can go with that. I have no idea. So you have an outer envelope stamp. You have an RSVP card stamp if you're doing that to be mailed back. The other thing about wax seals, your post office or your mail person may be like, if it fits through this little slot, it's not going to be an extra stamp. It's going to be an extra stamp. Go ahead and pay to put 2 stamps on the outside. Otherwise, they will all end up back at your house. Half of them are going to end up back at your house, and the other half are going to just disappear.
Yeah, and always take your mail to the post office and have them weigh a fully assembled set.
And then I hear the term hand canceled sometimes. Do you know exactly what that means?
So it can honestly mean different things according to which post office worker you're talking to that day. But what they usually have me do if I have a bride that wants them hand canceled is you take them in and you literally get the stamp from them. You cancel out the postage, which just means that you put a stamp over the stamp. That's usually what hand canceling is. Sometimes the post office will do it for you, but usually they're going to hand you the stamp and tell you to go sit at a table and you do it.
So it means it doesn't go through like a machine to stamp at the end. It just looks prettier.
Yes, it keeps it from going through one machine. People don't understand that there's actually no way that your mail's not going to go through any machines. It's always going to go through a machine at some point. It helps it stay a little prettier.
And while we are talking about pretty things, let's talk about gold foil and a letterpress.
They're two of my favorite things to do. Letterpress being my all-time favorite. And basically, both of these methods, well, depending on what the kind of gold foil that I use is pressed gold foil. So both of these printing methods, you have to have a die designed for each piece that you want to get printed with this method. And then if it's foil, the die presses the foil into the paper. If it's letterpress, it presses the ink into the paper. They just add another layer of texture, another layer of depth. They're really pretty and I love them.
Do you yourself offer either of those? Do you outsource those if a couple wants them?
I offer both. I do outsource them. I have great printers that I use for both kinds. It'll add on about a week or two for gold foil. It'll add on 2 or 3 weeks for letterpress.
I know we've talked a lot about wedding websites. Where do you actually put that on your wedding stationery?
In a couple places can work. On your save the date. Send it out on your save the date. That'll kind of keep some of the questions leading up to when you send your invitations out off your back. Like, it's not going to solve all the questions, but it'll at least be something that your guests can check. Then in the invitation itself, you can put it on your information card if you're going to have one. And then again, if you're doing digital RSVPs, you can put it on your RSVP card. And usually I do like a QR code that your guests can scan for that.
If a couple wants to work with someone like yourself, an actual human that lives here in Lexington, Kentucky, and holds their hand through everything, works with them on etiquette for everything, how does custom stationery work price-wise?
So I have a custom fee of $250 for the wedding invitation and all the little pieces that go with it. That covers all the design for the pieces. It does not cover like a custom map. It doesn't cover custom crest. Fully custom map is going to be $395. A custom crest costs an extra $250. I do give some discounts if people are getting, multiple designs. If somebody wants a map and a crest, then, I'll give a discount for that. And then like a lot of wedding stationers, they kind of hide their prices. They don't like to show you exactly what you're spending for everything, but I have a pretty detailed list of what things are going to cost on my website. So like, it's too much for me to sit here and go into detail about, but I do try to be pretty open about that.
If you decide that you do not want to have a full experience with your wedding stationery, Allison also has digital options that are available for a minimal fee. We're going to talk a little bit about printing your own as well, because I know some of you have probably been listening to that and DIY options. Allison, tell me a little bit about the word digital. Whenever a couple hears that they can get digital invitations, what does that mean?
I have nothing against DIY. I think it's great. If you have time and you want to put the effort into it and make your own, then I want to make that as easy as possible. So I sell templates that kind of coordinate all of your stationery for you, and you can go in, you can purchase it. They're all set up through Canva, which is a free service that you can use. You can go into Canva, you can change the fonts, you can change the colors, you can even change the artwork if you want to, but like at that point, then you're probably moving pretty far away from the original design. And one of the fun things is You can actually get it printed directly through Canva when you're done, when you have something that you're happy with. And it's fairly affordable service to get it printed through Canva. And if you want to go even a little bit more budget friendly and you have a printer and a way to make a straight cut, you can print them at home. I won't say it's the easiest thing ever, but that's how I started. I did my own invitations and I did them at home. The only thing that I outsourced was I had the invitation itself done in letterpress. So everything else I printed at home and put together and cut out. I really enjoyed it. The other thing that you can do with your digital templates for an even more budget friendly is email them. You can email them to your guests if you want to go fully digital.
If a couple wants to print their invitations out at home, is there a particular kind of paper or paper weight that you recommend that they use?
So yeah, I would recommend going with a heavy cardstock, which you can find on Amazon. I would look into 100-pound cardstock or more. It's not very expensive. I looked it up today and it was maybe $15 for a pack of 50. A pack of 50, you'll get 2 invitations per page. So that's 100 invitations right there for $15.
Plus your ink and your time.
Plus ink and time, yes.
One of the things, too, that I want to make sure that couples know is if you are inviting 100 guests, that does not mean you need 100 invitations.
Yes. To be honest, I made that mistake when I ordered our save the dates and then they got here and I was like, wait, this is a lot. But yeah, you're going to end up needing, it's going to, of course, vary from wedding to wedding with the amount of couples versus single guests you're inviting, but like you're going to end up needing about 60 to 70% of your total.
And I know that some couples don't necessarily want to deal with another human, which is okay. And so they may go through like Minted or Zola. Do you have any experience or know anything about their pricing off the top of your head? Have you ever compared your pricing to their pricing to see if there's much difference?
I haven't. I've been told by a few brides that I'm not much more expensive, especially if you want certain things. I would say that if paper's not important to you, then those websites are great. But, you know, going through an actual person, you're going to get specialized attention and things are going to be a little bit more you.
Absolutely. And the etiquette will probably be a little bit more in line with what it should be. And like you said, the digital and printing with Canva, I have printed business cards straight through Canva. It is literally 2 clicks and it's done. It's super easy. So I would definitely like any type of digital print from your website. If someone found something on Etsy, you're supporting a small business that way.
Yeah.
But I cannot imagine the time that it might take if you are going to do it yourself, because you are going to have to print several to get the sizing right. If you are listening to this and you have DIY'd your invitations, will you shoot me an email and tell me maybe about how much you spent on those, or maybe how much time it took you? Did you want to hit the printer with a hammer, or did everything go okay? I'm just curious because I don't know anybody off the top of my head that has DIY'd their stationery lately. That was 2015 when you did yours. So, but honestly, if you're listening, I would love to get some feedback from you on your experience and what you spent on that. A few key takeaways that we want you to have from today is you're going to mail your save the dates 6 to 8 months out. It can be a little further if it needs to be, but no more than a year out. Your invitations are going to be 6 to 8 weeks out. Even if you do not do a save the date, you do not need to mail your invitations any further out than that. Please do not mail them 3, 4, or 5 months before the wedding. Your guests are going to lose them. They're going to forget to RSVP. They're not going to realize it's an invitation and that they're supposed to RSVP. So invitations, we're mailing 6 to 8 weeks before the wedding. I also recommend keeping a copy of each of your stationery items for yourself so that you'll have those, I don't want to say as a souvenir, as a memento. Okay. I also recommend saving a copy of each of your stationery items for yourself as a memento. And then I also recommend, while you're working on all stationery items, to go ahead and put one piece of each off to the side so that you will have that ready for your flat lay pictures on the day of your wedding. And you don't have to go back and look for those. Make a couple extra wax seals while you're working on that. And actually talking about wax seals, we did not talk about making them. We talked about what they were. So I feel like wax seals, a lot of people think that they are still like you used to burn something to make them.
Right. Yeah. There's like these little spoons that you could put the little wax pellets, or even I think before that, they come as a candle.
And yes, the candle. Yes.
Candle. And that would drip and everything. But no, they have glue guns, just glue guns. You take a glue gun, you put the wax seal stick and it pumps them out.
And they come in 4 million different colors, literally. And then you can get any type of the stamp. Is that where you go like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the stamp is what you actually push into the wax to make the wax seal.
And the stamp, you can get that customized with your initial, a flower, any type of design. I have actually seen several different stamps, mixed colors. I've seen dried flowers in them. Like literally the sky's the limit again when it comes to your stamp.
I can design pretty much anything you want if you want a custom, or I have a range of, again, stock options that we can use.
We're just going to circle back to a couple things that we forgot. Digital pricing. Talk to me about digital pricing and how much the digital downloads cost.
So a digital download, right now, I only offer it in one kind of complete set. It's $27 for a full set of designs. That's going to include your save the date, invitation, RSVP card, info card. I think I've got a mini card in there and like table numbers. That's what I currently offer on my website.
That's very affordable.
Yeah, very affordable.
And so then basically the couple will go in, put their names in, put their date, their time, location.
Yeah, basically how it works is after you make the purchase, you download a PDF from the website, and that has links to all the different designs on Canva. And so, yeah, you can customize to your heart's content on Canva.
Perfect. I just wanted to make sure we covered that price too.
Yeah.
Allison, thank you so much for chatting with me today. Like I said, I know you're not a big people person, and honestly, you're not a big talking person. Allison has 2 corgis that I'm honestly obsessed with. Ada will probably be in her headshot that I post, so you'll get to see Ada. She's incredible. I was a little sad you did not get to hear them bark any during the podcast, but Allison, thank you so much for joining me today, and give folks that are listening your website and social media links.
My website is www.wildjoystudios.com. You can find me on Instagram and Pinterest at wildjoystudios.
And I will say, if you are on Pinterest, Allison has an incredible Pinterest, so go check that out. Tons of inspiration there. Allison, thank you again.
Thank you.
For more information about Simply Love Studio or to schedule your wedding consultation, go to simplylovestudio.com.